What's up, everybody? This is Alexis, and you're listening to another episode of the Power to Be Show podcast. On the Power to Be Show, we are showing people every week the impact of recognizing how God impacts every aspect of your life. Dive in each week as Dr. Bird, who was both a pastor and professor, chats with various entrepreneurs and leaders in the community. This week, we have Trinnette Morris, owner of Trindy Enterprises, LLC. If you've never had her chef creations, you are definitely missing out. She is an innovator and a hub for many small businesses in the community. Before I turn it over to the host, in addition to subscribing to our YouTube channel, I want you to consider being a sponsor or a donor of the show. We all have the power to be. Now here is our host, Dr. Terrell Bird. Welcome to another episode of the Power to Be Show.
Be creative, be connected, and be courageous. Worship does not stop on Sunday. Now, if you were going to give advice that you would say a business owner must do this to succeed, listeners, I hope that you have been blessed, even as I have, with what we've heard today.
Thank you, Alexis. It's good to be back to another Power to Be show, and I am delighted to have Trinnette,
yes.
Here with us.
So you're trying to combine Trindy and Trinnette.
Right. I'm glad to have you with us.
Thank you.
And I'm really excited because you'll be talking about one of my favorite things to do, which is to eat. And because you are a connoisseur and a professional in the area of food,
yes.
I want to hear about that. But before we get into that,
okay, all right.
Trinnette, I want to find out a little bit about you, where you're from. Give me a little bit of your background.
Okay.
And then we can then talk a little bit about your professional life.
All right. So, again, I'm Trinnette Morris. I am born and raised here in West Palm Beach, Florida. But I am only back here about 8.5 years now.
Okay.
So I
From
Orlando. So when I graduated from high school and went to college to the great FAMU,
All right.
Great Florida A&M University, right after I moved to Orlando.
Okay.
To pursue my master's degree. I got my undergrad in education.
Okay. Not culinary.
No,
Okay.
never thought I would. We'll probably get to that, but yeah. So my degree is in elementary education.
Okay.
My master's degree is in educational leadership.
Okay.
So I went to school to be a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And which I did for a short time before deciding to go into the corporate side of education.
Okay. Did you were you a teacher in the Orlando?
In Orlando, yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Taught in Orlando. Was also an interim assistant principal in Orlando as well, a curriculum specialist, and then decided, I didn't decided, kind of called me to go into the private sector of education.
Mm-hmm.
So I worked for Leapfrog, the toy company, the educational toy company for 10 years.
I see.
And then made my way into the culinary field.
Okay, so wow. So interesting path.
Absolutely.
But the fact that you grew up in West Palm,
Absolutely,
and then left West Palm to do
to go to college,
do your training. Are there siblings?
I do. I have 3 siblings. There are 3 girls.
Okay.
And there's 1 boy. I was the baby for a long time.
Okay.
And then my parents had my baby sister, Zipporah, who is about 14 years younger than me.
Oh, wow. Big gap there, huh?
It's a big gap. She's like my baby.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I can see
she
that.
is,
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely siblings. My parents are here.
Okay.
My dad was a chef.
Okay.
My parents had a catering business.
Gotcha.
My mom owns a daycare right now. So, you can kind of see.
Okay.
why I
So
would be
now.
an educator.
Yeah.
culinary.
Educator and you both sides of it. You got your mom and dad are really meshed well with your life.
Absolutely. I don't think that we didn't see it this way, but absolutely now as a real grown adult and looking back, you definitely like, my mom's an educator, taught kids, has a daycare, dad being a chef. And now, I consider myself definitely a culinary educator for sure.
Yeah, wow. It's interesting because usually when people, either you're really into this elementary education thing or at some point you say it's not for me. I mean, I started out as an elementary education major.
Okay.
But, they do the student observation day where they send you to the schools and they sent me to the worst school. And after one day, I came back and changed my major to philosophy. So I knew
I need
that
to preach to these kids.
That's right.
Kids.
There you go. I knew that was not my calling. But anyway, but why not stick with the education piece?
Well, the nice thing about it, I've never left education. Okay. There's not been a time where I have not been educating youth.
Okay.
So I don't look at it as leaving at all. Okay. I just shifted the way in which I do it. I did leave the classroom, but when I left the classroom to even go into the administrative side of things, it was always done with, where do I see myself making the most impact? How do I impact the most kids? And so in the classroom, it's very isolated. You're in the room with your group of kids, your set of kids. But I was always a teacher that got sent other people's kids. So, someone was misbehaving in Miss Jones' class, they sent them to my class, so
they knew you could handle it.
Exactly. Yeah. So to me, it was about where can I make the most impact and compound what I'm able to do with these kids, with multiple kids. And so, and everything that I've done has always kind of been done with that thought in mind. And so I never left education. How I show up in education now is different. Okay. My impact is different because there's some limitations in the classroom. There are a lot of limitations in the classroom. And there are a lot of limitations when you work for the school district as well.
I was going to say, especially within the public school system.
Absolutely. There are a lot of limitations. So what I was able to do, even when going to Leapfrog, was still be working for a private education company, but still, even here in Palm Beach County, I did so much in Palm Beach County when I worked for Leapfrog, but I was able to do that not just in one place because I traveled literally not just all over the country. I got to travel abroad as well and really kind of talk about education and what I saw as issues with education. They really gave me a lot of leeway to do a lot of things that I would have never been able to do in the public education system.
That kind of brings me to another thought. One of the things that we really pride ourselves on in terms of the focus is calling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I just think that anybody who is in the classroom, it ought to be a sense of a calling before they even enter into that. I also love to emphasize the importance of how we integrate our faith and our work.
Absolutely.
So that worship doesn't stop on Sunday, that we're constantly, every day, acknowledging the fact that God is involved in the work we do.
Absolutely.
So sounds like you have that same kind of sense.
Absolutely. I mean, I often tell people when they ask me about cooking and education, I use these words. Education has always been the calling. I've known that, since I was this big, right? Or this little.
Yeah.
And cooking is a gift.
Okay.
And the fact that I get to do both of them,
wow. Yeah.
Is somewhat perfection.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can't.
I love it. Perfection.
Think of it any other way.
The calling and the gifting.
Yeah, because I get to exercise both. Because it's a different situation when you are wanting to do something and you just don't know how to make it happen. You know what I'm saying? You want to you have a calling and you're doing that, but you also have passions. You have other things that you want to also do.
Sure.
And sometimes we get upset. Sometimes we get maybe mad at God because it's like, you got me over here doing this.
Yeah.
I know I'm supposed to be doing it and I'm okay with doing it, but I also want to do that too. And for me, I do both. I do everything
Okay.
that I literally set my mind to do. I'm able to do it.
Okay.
And
So,
so
yeah, that's
without
good.
neglecting the call.
Sure. So what did that transition look like? I mean, just in a practical way, how did that happen?
Well, a lot of thought.
Okay.
A lot of thought had to go into how to make it practical,
Mhm.
because and just like anything else, once you start to do something, you can get so focused on that you forget, or that you just don't have time, or you don't make time. But for me, it was very intentional.
Mhm.
It was very intentional that when I decided to leave education in the traditional sense, meaning leave the classroom,
Mhm.
and even when I decided to start my own education technology company on the consulting side, when I left Leapfrog, it was still very intentional. I want to exercise my gift. Like, I love cooking. People love my cooking. How can I integrate that into what I'm doing? I was traveling 18 days a month. What does that look like for
Wow.
me to be able to still do this that I love? And that's the call.
So was your traveling consulting, or
It was consulting, yeah.
Okay,
So with
okay.
Leapfrog, I was traveling 18 days a month. And then when I decided to start my own education consulting business, they were my first and only client for 2 years. And so that travel never really subsided. It did, I was still doing the same amount of traveling, because I was still servicing the same accounts. And so in that job, I was the professional development director. So I was training teachers all over the country.
Wow.
And so when I started my own consulting business and they were my only client for 2 years, I was still doing the same thing. But I also had the desire and the gift of cooking. And so I was always cooking. People were always asking me to do things. And because I was now, after 10 years, able to make my own schedule, even though they were the client, I was still able to have some more flexibility. I was like, I really want to do more cooking. How do I
Okay.
integrate that in with this travel schedule that I have?
Sure.
And so I decided at that time, well, okay, I can't open up a brick and mortar because I travel too much, right? I didn't want to necessarily cater at the time because, it's a commitment as well. So it's like, you know what? I want to go. And it was crazy that I even thought this way. I think at the time I was like, I want to like personal chef for people when I want a personal chef for people.
Okay,
I don't
sure.
want it to be a firm commitment. If I want a personal chef for someone and they need somebody for the weekend and I'm available, then I can do it. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
That kind of thing. And so I went out to San Diego and got my personal and private chef certification.
Okay.
It was like over a weekend, that you get this certification. And I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with it. I knew that I wanted to cook for people, important people, and people who had disposable income.
Okay.
Be clear about that. It was very specific at that time.
Okay.
Because I couldn't just, you couldn't just call me. I mean, I had a job, right?
Right,
So I couldn't
right.
just, play around with it. It had to be something that made sense. And so once you get that certification, they put you on this website, where people can go on if they're looking for a personal or private chef, and they put in, what genre of food you cook. They put in a zip code where they need the personal and private chef, and then, the list populates. And so I'll never forget, I got my very first, I didn't know how this was going to work, but I was in New York City on a consulting job. New York City, that was one of my major accounts. I was probably spent more time in New York than Florida during this time.
Wow, yeah.
And I'll never forget, I was in the hotel, I was getting ready to go out to dinner, and I got a phone call. And the phone call was like, we got your name off this website for a personal or private chef. We're going to be coming into Orlando in July for a week. And we, want to talk to you about your services for a family of 13 for 7 days in a row for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I'm like, well, geez. So I was like, I said, well, I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm on my way to a dinner with a client. But what she also asked, she said, can you email us menus pretty quickly? I was like, I said, I'm getting ready to go to dinner with a client. Can I get it to you in a couple days? And she's like, we really need it, right away.
Wow.
And so I was like, I probably won't be able to get it to you tonight. I'm just going to be really, really honest with you. And so if you need to make a decision, I'll get,
sure,
to carry on if that is necessary. And then something just kept tugging in my spirit to stop and do the menus. I didn't even have like all these menus set. Something just kept saying, send some menus, type something up, send something. I didn't know who the client was. She was calling for the client. So she was like the secretary.
Like an intermediary.
Yeah. But I kept, something just would not let me not stop and send those menus. And so I was like, okay. I stopped, delayed my dinner, typed up 7 days of, literally, I didn't have it already. Typed up 7 days of breakfast, 7 breakfasts, 7 lunch, 7 dinners. Because they wanted, like soul food-ish.
Okay.
So it wasn't hard, but I just, I didn't have it.
Yeah.
And so I did that, sent it, and then went to dinner. And about 3 days later, they called, the young lady called and she was like, the family loved your menus. We would like to book you for those 7 days. I hadn't even really gotten my pricing, structure together.
Yeah.
And that client is still my client to this day.
Wow. And that was how long ago?
That was in 2000 and what year are we in?
We're in 22.
That was 20. That was like 9 years ago.
Wow. But
yeah,
which speaks to
like almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, wow, speaks to the quality of what you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, just listening to that story is amazing because it's almost like you can see how God puts things
together.
Yeah.
But had I not stopped and like listened, and that's really one of the things that I try to be so intentional about when I'm doing, not always. Sometimes I just move. Sometimes I move really fast without listening. But I will say that when I stop and I listen and I hear the voice of God.
Yeah, that still small voice. Huh?
Yeah, because I'm telling you, I was intent on getting to that dinner. New York City traffic's bad. I was like, I got to get out of here.
Sure.
But something just kept tugging, like, send them, send it. Like, you need to send it.
Wow.
And the client, who I can say now, at that time I had I didn't talk about him a lot. A man of God, a mega pastor. I've traveled with them. They were here for his family. Part of his family was just here from, every year they go somewhere different to spend at least 2 weeks as a family. But his parents were here for a month in Fort Lauderdale from July 1st to July 30th. I serviced them every day. Wow. The dad is also a bishop in the AME church, where retired bishop. So just a very great family.
Yeah.
And just had I not stopped, I would have never made that connection. The connection has blessed my, life in so many ways.
To me that there's some spiritual.
Oh yeah. It has blessed my life in so many ways. That I just can't imagine that had I not made that particular connection.
Yeah.
So
good. Well, that leads me to another question, Ms. Morris. One is, there is this entrepreneurial spirit. I think that. And I always kind of like to dig into, why do people choose to do it themselves, the entrepreneurial world?
Well, honestly, it was another one of those voices.
Okay.
Because the trajectory for, if my father were here right now, the trajectory for my life as he saw it was, we're going to send you to school to be a teacher. You'll be an assistant principal, you'll be a principal, and then you'll come back home and you'll be the superintendent of Palm Beach County Schools.
Okay. That was the plan.
That's the plan. That was his plan.
Yeah.
And he probably in some way still thinks that might happen.
Yeah. Okay.
But literally, when I made the move from and I refer back to my father because my mom having a daycare, she's an entrepreneur. My mom is one of 16. My mom grew up on a 500-acre peanut farm.
Okay.
So she saw entrepreneurship in my grandparents all her lives. My
it's in you.
So it's in me.
Yeah.
My dad, very traditional, has worked a job for 30 years, and he believes when you get a good job, that you stay on that good job. So just imagine having two parents that are kind of the opposite in terms of how they believe you should navigate life. My dad on a job for over 30 years. My mom had a job. She stopped working when she had my baby sister, started opened up the daycare, and she's been an entrepreneur.
Wow. Now let me ask you. Now you say your dad, because you said you picked up the cooking from your dad.
From both parents. My mom is the best cook I know. My dad's a chef, but my mom's the best cook I know.
Okay. Now you're gonna explain that too.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, but he never opened up his own business. No.
He was always a chef for someone else, for an establishment.
Okay.
Always.
Okay.
Yes. Always.
So the chef and the cook. Talk to me about that. What's the?
So my mom, again, being one of 16, my grandmother being the best cook I knew. My grandmother is deceased, but my mom being out of 9 girls and 7 boys, probably the closest I would think. And I think her siblings and my cousins probably would agree would be probably the closest to my grandmother in terms of cooking,
her
right?
gifted,
Although all of them can cook.
They can throw down, huh?
Throw down. But I think that my mom definitely is the closest to being able to perfect Pauline's everything, right?
Okay.
So being as a child, having access to a farm and going, for summers and to Georgia, I always saw very large meals being prepared. Like I always saw I always knew where my food came from. Wasn't a surprise. Sure. You probably couldn't have given me anything out of a can because I knew and that's the way that my mom cooked as well. And so my mom having that kind of upbringing, I mean, literally, she's just the best cook that I know. Now, my dad is a great cook. He's a chef. The difference is he's run kitchens, that kind of thing. So chefs.
So he can manage things.
Yes.
But she can.
And she can too now. Don't get me wrong.
They both can manage.
They both can. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So, I have to be this way, right?
Yeah, they poured into you.
Yeah.
So in a sense, because I was going to ask you what inspired you. What's your biggest inspiration
for cooking? I would say it's all of that. It's my mom, it's my dad, it's my grandmother, it's my travels that I had with Leapfrog. Like being able to travel as much as I did with them. I was eating out every day, all day.
Talk about Leapfrog a little bit.
So Leapfrog is most people know Leapfrog from the retail space, the Leap Pad, the Leapster. Most kids, at some point, especially if you are of a certain age demographic, your kids learn phonics with Leapfrog, right? Yeah. So Leapfrog is an educational toy company. Most people, again, know it from retail, going to, stores like Target, Walmart, Toys R Us, and buying educational devices. So educational electronics. But what most people probably don't know is that Leapfrog had a division that was totally dedicated to education, to schools. So schools could buy Leapfrog product that people never saw in the store.
That wasn't on the counter.
Wasn't on the counter. Specifically developed for schools.
For schools, okay.
Yes. And so I work for the education division.
Okay.
And I, again, is one of those things where I was teaching, minding my own business in Orange County Public Schools, but I was always labeled a master teacher. Even from my first year, that label was always put on me. And I never really saw it that way. I just had some unique experiences that led me to be able to teach the way that I taught. I interned at Marva Collins, who was a world-renowned educator.
With her creative.
Exactly. And so those things gave me a little bit more of an edge as an educator because I had different experiences. So my expectations going into the classroom were always super, super high. I was a second grade teacher that had 10th grade vocabulary all around the classroom. So because that's what we saw at Marva Collins.
Yeah, right.
That was the expectation.
Yeah.
So coming into the public school system, when I didn't teach right away. I did not say this, but my first 3 years in Orlando, I sold cruises while I was getting my master's and just, living my life, best life.
Living your best life.
Living my best life. Honestly, it was a point in time that I didn't think I would teach because I was making a lot of money selling cruises. At that time in 98, from 95 to 98, only 8% of the world had cruised. So cruising was fairly new, right?
Right.
So the money to be made in cruising was different. And then I was traveling as well then. So travel has always been a big part of, what I love to do. And so it was not until my roommate, she was my best friend here in high school and middle school. And we both moved to Orlando together. She was teaching. She taught right out of college. We both went to FAMU. And she came home one day and she said, "We need a 4th grade teacher." And I was like, "I hope y'all find it." Why are you telling me? I'm not ready to teach yet. Like I'm, having fun.
Yeah.
Making money. I knew I would teach, but at the same time, I was like, this is like good. This is a great gig that I have. And it started off as a part-time job as because I had to have a job while I was up there. And she said, "We need a 4th grade teacher." And this is like when FCAT first came out. Like literally, if you remember, again, like the 95, 96 is when FCAT. And so I was like, I'm not yet. And she was like, "I promise if you meet the principal, you're going to change your mind." And I almost took it as a challenge. Like, I want to meet this person.
Yeah.
Really? I'm going to change my mind about teaching?
Yeah.
I mean, about not.
Yeah. So
he changed my mind.
Changed your mind.
I literally took the challenge, went in and met Dr. Richardson, still a mentor of mine to this day.
Okay.
Older white guy.
Okay.
But he was so passionate about kids. He was passionate about our kids.
Sure. Okay.
And he literally made me change my mind.
Wow. And you stayed there doing that for how long?
So I stayed with Dr. Richardson for about 4 years until he left and went to the district. And that's when he told me that I needed to do something different. He kept saying, "Trinnette, you need to be in leadership."
Okay.
He's like, "You don't need to be in the classroom." He's like, "I need you to be a principal."
Wow.
He's like, so he, kind of sped. I was going to get my master's in special education. I changed to educational leadership because of him.
Okay.
And then, so again, curriculum specialist, did the interim AP position. And then I got a call. I was really passionate about reading. And so I would go to reading conferences and I would speak on formative assessment and different topics that were important. And at this one reading conference, it was the International Reading Association conference. We were in Chicago. I saw the people in the back taping my session on formative assessment. And that tape got to the president of Leapfrog. And when I got back, I had a voicemail on my phone at school saying, "I want to meet you." And I never forget, I called my assistant principal into my office, Elvis Epps, who's just retired principal here in West Palm. And I was like, "Listen to this message." And Mike Wood, who's the founder and former CEO and president of Leapfrog, was on the voicemail saying, "I saw your session on formative assessment." He was like, "I really want to meet you. I want you to come out to California, talk to our team about formative assessment," because that's when they were like really in the prime of building product for schools.
Yeah.
And so I called back, got his secretary, and she, confirmed that they wanted me to come out. And the first thing I said was, "Can I bring somebody with me?" And they were like, "Yeah." So I took my best friend, Fursella Pinier. She's a guidance counselor here in Palm Beach County Schools. I was like, "We going to California for a week." And I went out there, and it was
girl trip. Yeah.
I went out. They, they pulled out all the stops, all the bells and whistles. I talked to all their teams, marketing, engineering, about really what kids needed in order to be able to be successful in this assessment environment. And they offered me a job.
Wow.
And I said no.
Why?
Did not take the job because they wanted me to come to California to live in San Francisco. And I told them at the time, I said, my dad would fake a heart attack. And I have a real one.
He would fake one. Yeah,
First of all, me leave the school district, a good job, and be in California. And my dad doesn't fly.
Your dad is the stay put type of guy.
And I'm I was like, I can't do that to my dad, but more importantly, I can't do that to my mom because he would somehow equate her supporting it to her. I just wasn't gonna do that.
I just wasn't gonna do it.
It just wasn't the right. It wasn't the right time. And 6 months later, they called me and they were like, "We can create a position for you in Florida." And so I was like,
"Wow." I
talked to my superintendent. I didn't want to quit. And I'll never forget. He said something. So he said, "Orange County Public Schools gonna always be here. you'll always be able to come back here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, go.
Yeah, sometimes you got to know when to move.
Yeah.
You know, so,
He was like, go.
Yeah.
And it was the best decision
Yeah. Wow.
one of the best decisions that I've made.
Well, it sounds like, Trinnette, it sounds like you still have passion for youth and
Absolutely.
children. I can just tell in your voice
Absolutely.
that this is something that you are very passionate about. That
Yeah, kids have to be
pathos.
around. Kids have to be around. That's most important. A lot of my staff right now in every aspect of my business, whether it be catering, whether it be at the cafe, whether it be, we do a lot with the convention center. I have the contract there for the concessions. We just did a crypto event this weekend.
I was going to say, tell me about your businesses
right now. So much is going on.
And before you jump into that,
all right.
I also want to know how your businesses were impacted during COVID. Yeah.
So my business is what we currently do at Trindy Enterprises is a couple different things. We are a cafe, so that's Trindy Gourmet Cafe, which is located on 407 North Rosemary Avenue in West Palm Beach. That is the breakfast cafe. That is, we've been there we celebrated 8 years in August.
In Rosemary?
On Rosemary,
Rosemary,
yes.
Okay.
So 8 years. We just had our 8-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Extremely, proud of that.
And the cafe offers what kind of?
So we're breakfast only.
Breakfast only,
and we're only Tuesday through Friday. So only 4 days a week are you able to get Trindy Gourmet breakfast.
Okay.
Very important for the listeners because people still think we're open on Mondays after 8 years of never being open on a Monday. Ever, never.
Tuesday through
Friday.
Through Friday.
That
Listeners, I hope you hear that.
And for breakfast only, we changed our hours for the summer. So we're 8 o'clock to 11:30.
Okay.
11:30, we are closed. We're on Uber Eats, so you can get us on Uber Eats if you aren't able to make it down. People have always asked for years if the hours will ever extend. And I tell people like this, I was a caterer first. And I like to tell people I'm a caterer with a cafe. So it was important for me to open up a brick and mortar to kind of just have a space. But we are caterers first. That's our core business, right?
Okay.
That is the core business. And the cafe
it's a
nice to have.
Yeah.
But honestly and truly, if I decide to close the cafe tomorrow, our core business has been catering.
Okay.
And so when people don't understand why our hours aren't longer or days aren't longer, it's really because I never intended for it to be that way. I always intended for it to be in and out, 4 day a week operation. Nothing more, nothing less. We've toyed with expanding to lunch and doing some other things, but I think the nice part and the niche about what we do, I've had the same chef for 8 years.
Wow.
He's committed to breakfast because he has another gig that he does right after. And so for consistency purposes and all of that, I'm just really happy with what we do for breakfast, right? For that.
Good.
But our catering operation happens at our Spruce location.
Okay.
It's also our incubator location where we incubate other small culinary businesses as well who are getting started. That's a big part of what we do.
Wow. So you're pouring back in.
Have to.
That's great. I love that.
Have to. So right now there are about 13 other small culinary businesses who use our space as a commissary because the lack of commissary space in this county is appalling.
The lack of space anywhere.
Yeah, the lack of space and affordable space.
Yes,
and so that is another reason why when I look at my entire business and everything that I do and being able to decide what it is that's important, it's important that people get breakfast. Don't get me wrong. And I love being able to offer breakfast. But when I look at all the things that I know that I have to do in order to fulfill the call on all levels, then and having to make decisions about what not to do, how long to do something. Rosemary is what Rosemary is. Spruce is the incubator plus our catering facility.
Now, but you cater more than breakfast. You cater.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. We cater every day, pretty much every day, all day. It's interesting. I think people, because we don't really post that a lot anymore because it's just what we do now.
Word of mouth. People know.
Yeah. So we literally cater We have corporate clients that we cater for on a daily basis. So yeah, we are catering all the time. So our catering location is at Spruce, but it's also our incubator for other culinarians to use that space to launch their business as well. And then over the last 2 years, we've been cultivating, really 3 years, we've been cultivating a relationship with the Palm Beach County Convention Center through another organization that I'm the executive director of called Blend Palm Beach County, where we are over all concessions for the convention center. So every time a large event comes into the convention center and they want concessions, we provide that concessions, whether it's we Trindy Gourmet or we bringing in other small businesses to provide those concessions. So that's a big part of what that's huge. It's a lot of what I do. So a lot of what I do has to do with other small businesses, bringing them to large business, bringing small business to large business.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So you're really, it's not only networking, but you're connecting people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great. And so the staff, you say you were mentioning, so how large of a staff do you have?
So it's funny that you say that.
I'm sorry.
A lot. It's so crazy. It's all, I mean, when I sit back from the outside and look in, I'm like, now doing payroll on Fridays, it used to be just my cafe staff, and catering is, in terms of staffing when we have events, right? Because you have catering where people come pick up, you have catering where you just drop off. You don't need staffing for that. So my catering staff has always been independent, event based, right?
Sure.
So we have that. We have about a good 30 roster of event-based catering staff. And then now I have the convention center. So that's a different group of people. But now I also have the contract with Brightline.
Wow.
So we provide all of the, I know. So, and I have a full-time production facility, a full-time staff that produces our bento boxes for Brightline. So if anybody out there goes on the Brightline, whether you're going to Miami or Fort Lauderdale and soon to Orlando, and you book the premium ticket, in that premium ticket comes our bento boxes that are produced and curated by Trindy Gourmet. So we curate 4 boxes for them. We do about 5,000 boxes a month right now.
Okay. Well,
and in the season, we are busy. I have a great team. I have a general manager now. Okay. Crazy. So I'm busy, but I have a great team, and I've learned to delegate. So one of the biggest things, and I got to just make sure I say this for the other small businesses out there, because one of the biggest reasons a lot of small businesses aren't successful or never scale is because they never delegate. They don't know how to delegate. They're scared to delegate. They don't want to give the baby away. They don't want to share finances. They don't want to, everything is held close to the chest because it's your baby and it's being you, right?
I was going to ask you, what advice would you give? But
this is the biggest advice. You got to in order to grow, you got to let go.
Let go. Yeah. Wow.
There's no way. I look at every step of my journey, especially when we just talk about the culinary part, but it's not just with the culinary. It started honestly when I was in the classroom. My delegation or ability to delegate didn't just start. I look at when I was in the classroom, I would give the kids don't come ask 3 other people before you come ask me.
Right.
Somebody else might, because it's one of me. 30 of y'all. Y'all can help each other as well. And then if y'all can't help each other, then I'm here, right? So it starts with stuff like that, right? Being able to not be the only person in control of the information, right? Or how the information flows.
That's wisdom. That's wisdom.
And so that is important. And so then it transferred to Leapfrog. I developed more managers at Leapfrog probably than any other director, because I wasn't afraid. I was like, I don't want to have all the information. I gotta have a team of people that I can delegate to.
Yeah, I get into that as a pastor too. People expect the pastor to be, to do it all, and I'm like, no, there's other people that can do
exactly. And someone said something so profound 2 weeks ago, and I reposted it. Is that entrepreneurs typically have to make 40, at minimum, 40,000 decisions a day. And that resonated with me because I'm like, some days I'm like, I don't want to even want to decide where I'm eating.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
And people will think, you don't know where you want to go to eat. No, I really don't. Like I'm decision fatigued sometimes. So because it's usually me and everybody. So it's like, no, you got to create layers in order to be able to even function so that you can think about the next level. So you can think about the next play. It's hard to do that when you are decision fatigued for real.
Oh, audience, I hope you're getting that.
You can't.
It's
and so
important.
creating other layers of people who have skill and also developing other people. You know, when I decided just literally in the last 2 months, really with my Brightline contract that I had to have a GM, I was like, you know what, Lord, like I really want somebody who's hungry. I want someone who's not interested in being still. I want someone who really wants to do their own thing eventually. I don't want anybody who's here for a long time. Like I like for people to move and change. And so even in making that decision to create another layer, you know, I have a manager, like my cafe runs because I have a manager there. My chef is really the director's manager. And then I have my front staff, you know, so I never have to walk in there if I don't want to, right? Which is great. And I was like, I got to create that same thing. Every time I create something or take on a project, even whether it be the convention center or Brightline, I always create it in mind, who's going to take it over? It cannot be me. You know, I can put the pieces together,
but there's got to be
in terms of that day to day, like it cannot be me.
Yeah.
So I always start with that in mind. Like,
Gotcha.
All right, here's the opportunity. How do you take yourself out of it very quickly?
Gotcha. Now, how about COVID? What happened?
So COVID, for us, it just caused me to pivot.
Okay.
You know, it just caused me to start to think about diversifying my business so that it wasn't just catering. It wasn't just a cafe, though that is really what propelled my convention center conversations in a different way. I developed products.
Wow.
During COVID.
Yeah. I hear so many people say that.
Yeah.
That COVID, it unleashed
the
creative juices in people.
It did. I mean, because we were able to, although we never closed.
Okay.
So we never had, as a matter of fact, never closed, not one day.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, the need for us to be open because other places, so
you were essential.
We were essential.
Yeah.
And we were not only just essential because we were food. The city started to call. We started to supply food for the city, for city workers, for fire department, for summer camps when the first summer came. So we definitely were essential, but it also I opened up the second location on Spruce. The intention was because that was a larger location for it to really be a sit down location, but then COVID happened. So then that became I started to do pop-ups. I started to experiment more. I started to allow other people to come in to use it as their space. So it just literally allowed me to shift in a way that I don't know that I would have shifted this quickly.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
I really don't.
Well,
I don't know.
I mean, it's making, lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah.
You know, you're just doing what you need to do to survive.
Yeah.
In this.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, but it definitely allowed me to say, okay, if this ever were to happen again, what does your business model need to look like? You know?
So you need to be thinking about that. Well, so part of that, tell me what may have been or has been your biggest challenge or struggle.
Honestly, probably, there are a lot. You know, there are a lot of struggles. I don't want to ever romanticize this business in a way, although people get to see, they get to see what I post, obviously. There are a lot of struggles in this business. It's a struggle being a Black female in a white male dominated industry. And it's interesting. And it's always an interesting fact to me because the basis of most cooking it comes from us, right?
Yeah.
But this industry, in terms of owners and operators and decision makers and money, is definitely dominated by white males. And so it's a struggle sometimes walking into a room, wanting, needing, and expecting the same type of opportunities, and people think that you're there representing someone else. You know, there have been lots of times where I've been and I've done events that have never been done by a Black female before, and they're like, okay, so who's the owner?
Right.
Me. Like,
wow.
It's almost like sometimes I've been in situations where they didn't expect something so great from someone like me. And it's like, you know, because I've been so fortunate to be in rooms with people, not just, you know, from Leapfrog, from you know, early on in my life. So I've always known and always seen success. I've always seen successful African American, always. My neighborhood, the Westward, filled with successful African Americans. So so to me, it's like, why is it strange to y'all? You know what I'm saying? It's not strange to me.
And you can't emphasize enough that even the Black world is not a monolith. It's such diversity and such diversity in excellence. That's present.
So I would say that probably even still that is a challenge. It is the things that are expected of me, even as I'm navigating in much larger deals, you know, like the convention center and like a Bright Line. The things that they expect me to do are not things that they expect or have expected from anybody else.
Okay.
It's just what it is.
Well, Well, and I say this, and I want
they expect for me to make real magic.
Yeah, right. But but you are a pioneer and are to be applauded for that. So I guess what is so exciting is the drive that you have. That, and I don't know, it's obvious that your parents had something to do with that, put that in you. But
most definitely.
Because, you know, some people will quit in the light or in the face of the kind of difficulty that people will place upon you, not what you can do, but what they expect you to do. So I commend you for that.
No, thank you. There have been many days where I'm like, is this worth it? You know, do I really want to, you know, jump this high? Do I want to, knowing that everybody's not expected to jump this high? And then it always is, you have to, because if you do it now, the person coming won't have to. And so,
well, we're all standing on somebody's shoulders.
Always.
You know? So
always.
Being able to realize that. So with that being said, the challenge, and I think that that's a very important aspect of who you are, is how you overcome the challenge. What about the greatest success for you?
You know, I'm glad that you asked that, because and it probably will sound weird to a lot of people, because I've gotten a lot of awards, and I'm appreciative of every recognition and award that I've gotten. I've gotten to do some great things for a lot of great people, and I'm appreciative of those opportunities. But it's not until recently where I think I have felt like this is like one of the best things I've done. Wow. And really is as simple as myself and Katrina Long Robinson at the end of last school year did a pilot, a microgreen, an indoor grow of microgreen project in 2 schools. Where 2 urban schools where we went in and taught kids how to grow microgreens. Wow. And it sounds like,
well, I'm a gardener, so I can appreciate that.
Yeah. So in a world of, you know, where we push, as we should, you know, gardens, which are great and are needed, and more so now than ever. And again, being a granddaughter of a farmer, right? It's important. But what I saw as an educator, and what even outside of being an educator, formally, a formal educator, is that kids, it's hard to get kids excited about gardens.
That's right. Yeah.
And the reason why is because kids, especially now, it's about immediate gratification. They got to see it, feel it, touch it really quick, or other shiny balls get their attention, right?
Yeah.
So it's so many distractions. And so I was literally riding one day, leaving Restaurant Depot. I think I had just spent almost $300 on microgreens for a catering event. So we use micros. I love microgreens, not just, most people use them as a garnish. I use them as a whole meal, like for salads, the whole nine.
How does that work? Do you micro your...
So microgreens are just basically the first grow of most anything that you grow.
Okay.
So let's say you're growing kale.
Okay.
That very first sprout that you get from kale, that's your micro. It's the most nutrient dense piece of the kale that you'll ever have before it gets to be full grown.
Okay.
So, but also micros, you grow them faster in certain conditions. So microgreens are a huge business.
Okay.
Especially for restaurateurs and caterers, because we use them for not only meals, but we
so
use them for
you take
garnish.
those initial growth.
That initial growth, but you speed it up. So, and we speed it up in an indoor grow artificial environment.
Okay.
So what happens instead of, if you're growing it outside like you would normally grow kale, it would take longer. But in the indoor grow situation, what we do is we have artificial lights. So we put in lights. We bring in
kind of a grow house,
yeah. So, but in schools, what my thing was, I was like, I just spent $300 on microgreens. Kids can do this. And one of my best friends, they have they are one of the only Black organic microgreen farmers, consider it farmers, in the state of Florida. And they grow in a room probably this big, and they supply Whole Foods, Lucky's, probably a little smaller than this, actually.
Yeah. Wow.
Because they grow vertical.
Wow.
So I was like, I would love to do a microgreen project in schools. So I didn't even call her. I texted Katrina. I was like, let's have kids grow microgreens in schools. And she's an educator as well. And she literally texted me right back, and she was like, I'm on it.
Okay.
And probably within 2 hours, she already had identified 2 schools and 2 sponsors.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, great. So we start getting our stuff together. It's one of those things you kind of think about on the fly, and then you start to think about the logistics of it all. So I called my girlfriend. I was like, hey, will y'all be willing to come show kids how to grow micros? This is my girlfriend that has and she was like, yeah, Paige can do her husband. Yeah. And we set it up, got it together, bought all the materials, got the seeds, Paige came in, did our initial setups with our schools, and to see the excitement on our little brown and Black girls and boys' faces about thinking, just based on what we said, that in 6 days that this seed, we're going to cook with it. We're going to cook whatever. We're going to be eating it and cooking with whatever grows.
Wow.
But the way we spend it in the classroom is because we put it initially in science classrooms. That was a part of the science. So it's like, okay, if your grow last week looked like this and your grow this week looks like this, what did you do different?
Right, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? So it was a conversation. It was observation.
Yeah.
It was something they got to notate, jot down. So it became a part of their overall lesson. So it's not to say that they don't have some successes, some failures in a micro situation.
Sure.
It's just...
Well, it's a different,
like,
yeah. But I'm extremely gratified by the enthusiasm and the passion that you have for what you do and pouring back into these kids. And out of all the things you could have mentioned as greatest success, this is what it is, giving back.
Oh, yeah. And so it goes back to, in full circle, the question that you asked me in the beginning, like, how do you even how do you integrate the two? And that's the way I do it. Me being able to go into schools now and talk about nutrition and food, still educating, still food at the forefront, is how I'm able to. And then also having youth work, in the different parts of my organization as well.
That's great. That's great.
It's a beautiful thing. I tell people all the time, again, as I said in the beginning, being able to simultaneously know that you're in your call, also be working on your gift and the things that you just genuinely love, that make you tick. Those are the things that make me tick.
So
if I'm not doing something with kids or food or education or entrepreneurship, like I'm not ticking.
Well, it's a synthesis of wonderful.
It really is.
So
It's a blessing.
Yeah.
Like I don't take it lightly.
Let me have a word. If you don't mind, a word of prayer. Pray
Absolutely.
for you and pray for all the wonderful work you're doing. Let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, we thank you. This has been a wonderful blessing to be able to hear Trinnette share her experiences, not only as an entrepreneur, but the integration of her faith and her work and how she has found purpose. And even in finding that purpose, Lord, you have gifted her that she can be a blessing and gift to others. I thank you, oh God, for the wisdom that you've poured into her. And as she makes decisions for the success of her business, that she understands that there is a larger picture. Thank you for her acknowledgement of her calling, but thank you also for the excellence in which she is doing that only comes from you. So we thank you, oh God. I ask that you would bless, extend her boundaries, dear God, and may her light continue to shine bright so that others see the good work in her and give you the glory. So we thank you, oh God, for all that we've heard today. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 I want to present you with a Power to Be tumbler. It has our name on it. Every time you either drink for it or see it, you will think that you've been on the Power to Be show.
Yes, this will come in good. This will get good use.
Okay. Well, thank you, Trinnette, for being here. I appreciate you and what you have shared with our audience today.
I appreciate the invitation. I appreciate the platform, and thank you guys as well.
Thank you. All right, audience, we have been blessed. I have been blessed, and we've been inspired by what we've heard today. So we ask you to join us again next time for the Power to Be.
We would like to thank this episode's sponsor, Living Word Christian Community, located at 2390 South Military Trail, West Palm Beach, Florida, 33415, where Dr. Terrell Bird is the lead pastor. The worship service begins at 10:30 a.m. in person on Facebook and Instagram Live.